Hello and welcome back to Deep Dive with Dan Jones. And today our guest is Diana Ortiz Burns. She is a consultant with OspreyRising.com. You can find more information about her in the About section down below. And so let's get started. Hi, Diana. Thank you very much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Dan. Excited to
Yeah,
be here.
yeah, it's good to be here too. So we've worked together on a few things. When you had worked for an organization and I was doing some work as a vendor with them for an organization I'd worked for. And you and I also did a presentation for the Mid-Atlantic Renewable Energy Association back in 2023. So I just want
Yeah.
our viewers to know that I've always enjoyed the conversations that I've had with Diana, and I hope that you all will enjoy the conversation that we have today. She's always given me interesting viewpoints to consider with leadership and many other challenges that I've faced. So, Diana, why don't you start us off? Tell us a little bit about your experience in facilities management and business in general.
Happy to. Great to be here and looking forward to the conversation. So I've been facilities management for about 12 years now and started my career really as a student and lifelong learner, which I think we always are kind of that and should be living and leading through that space. Started my career, I always try to say, when I was in college. So I was the president of the student-led environmental group on campus, and I kind of got my feet wet there with both sustainability, which is a big part of my work and a passion of mine, but that also got me working very closely with physical plant and facilities management. Didn't really recognize it until years later, that kind of connection point, but that really was kind of the launch pad for me in getting into sustainability, facilities and operations management, capital projects, as well as just project management, understanding how things really get done and how to build relationships and work with others, and especially in a collaborative environment. So that was a really good foundation for me, and started my career then with a facilities management consulting firm and did a lot of work with nonprofits, which I definitely have really enjoyed that space, although I've branched off into other areas, government, private sector as well, but really have just enjoyed doing that work both as a consultant as well as inside an organization, kind of serving the needs and serving as a leadership on the owner side. And yep, currently doing a full-time project management job for a global investment firm in Baltimore, headquarters there, and helping tackle a special project there. So I like to kind of run the gamut. I think that's what's great about facilities management is you rarely ever see the same challenge really once in the exact same way. So
Right.
it's just a very fun career. So
Yeah.
loving
So,
it.
so you're the type of person that likes something new all the time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Get bored a little easily.
Yeah. Yeah. I think most people that are entrepreneurial, or even intrapreneurial, are you familiar with that term? Intrapreneur?
No.
Yeah, so an entrepreneur is somebody, of course, that goes out to start their own business. An entrepreneur is somebody that you can bring into your business that would like to, that can be innovative, likes the challenge of coming up with new ideas, but they also want the safety of having an established business or an established paycheck. So, you could bring in somebody to run like a division of your company, and if they're entrepreneurial, they'll come up with the answers to a lot of the problems and build the team within their framework. But there's less chance that you spend time training them and then watch them kind of fly away and start their own thing. So it's a term I'd only learned within the last couple of months that I've heard. So I don't know how old that term is, but I, yeah, well, we just went
I
off on
will
a
I
side.
will borrow that. No, that's good.
Yeah,
Our digressions are usually the best ones. So
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
definitely
they
gonna
are.
borrow,
They
definitely gonna
are.
borrow that term.
Yeah. So, so with my primary focus for businesses is in consulting is service businesses. So your HVAC, landscaping, electricians, pest control, and the ones that are small they normally don't have their own facility. But once they start getting into the 15 to 25 employees and up, they normally have to start moving into a facility to be able to handle the materials that they keep on stock, any of the chemicals, the administrative people. So how could a facilities manager help a service related business?
I think they can really help them in both long-term goals, achieving those, as well as just near-term return on investment, because facilities really is your biggest investment. And that's an area to invest in and grow versus seeing it as an expense. So I think looking at it from both that short-term benefits, if you're finding the right location and able to increase collaboration and you're able to streamline and find efficiencies that help save money. If you make the right first kind of cost decisions, you can find really easy energy savings in that way if you're savvy enough in what you're looking to get. But I think in long term, when you invest in your physical assets, you're able to have that go over the long haul and take you a lot further than just kind of operating without that long-term vision or having that asset. So that's something I learned very early in my career, is remembering that facilities is very much an investment and it's often the largest expenditure you have aside from personnel. So it's an area to understand and invest in.
So would a facilities manager be strictly looking at ways to reduce costs of their investment, or are there aspects of facilities management that could also generate money for, small or medium-sized businesses?
I think cost is certainly one angle and one consideration we need to be looking at, but I think stretching individuals' thinking about facilities management in a much bigger way and what it really encompasses is one of the best ways that I think executives can really position themselves well. And that's not just seeing facilities as a physical asset, it's seeing it as it's a place and we can take our spaces and really make them place. It's called like placemaking. So
Right,
you have this asset that's going to not only bring people together, but it can really bring your mission through in ways that you're not going to do if you're just looking at cost. So I always see it as kind of looking at a balance of it's your cost, but then it's understanding your resources, your people, your finances, but then your ultimate goals and overarching kind of mission. And if
right,
you're able to find that intersection between all those pieces, you're going to most likely make pretty well-informed decisions. But it definitely all starts with having a clear vision and mission for the business and understanding how does a physical asset help in leveraging that forward and looking at not just first cost, but long-term maintenance operations decisions. So just taking the time to be patient. I think seeing the bigger picture, engage others, and formulate a plan and understand that there's good reason to invest in making that decision
right.
thoughtfully at the start.
Yeah, I agree with you. And so, when you and I talk about different things, I think probably at least 10, possibly 20% of the time, I always bring up one of the people that I studied a lot when I was younger, and that's Walt Disney, who did a lot, right? But when they'd started out, they had studio space in a garage, and then they grew out of that into, an office building that they were renting and a storefront, and then they, got someplace like a block away, and then another couple of blocks away, and here they are working on like Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and they're having to like run the cells and the animation from one place to another and back and forth, and they came out of that movie and Walt himself was like, yeah, okay, we need a place where everything can be centralized. But at the same time, he's like, and we need to design desks that are better for the animators and chairs that are better for them. And, we need to have, rest areas so that they can, rejuvenate and play and joke around and so on and so forth. And so when I think of facilities management, um, that's one thing that always kind of resonates with me, that I think that Walt was very innovative in there was multiple things that his facility could do for him, both to streamline the creation of their product, right? So their animation and eventually movies, but also to bring together the team. And I think if I understand what you're saying there, that this is kind of the approach that a facilities manager should bring to their job?
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely. And to answer your kind of earlier question too about how can you bring additional kind of value and revenue through your
Right.
facility, I think when you kind of look at your space and understand your assets, so not just how much space you have, but how is it working for you, and just you're kind of able to categorize that and understand what percentage breakdown of how you're using space, how well are you using it, relationship of spaces to one another. It's really, quality over quantity. You can really design in a very efficient and optimized way if you again kind of start at the beginning as much as possible to really understand what it is you're looking to achieve and take that time to plan and design. But when you're in that design and concept process, you can also think about what are some other alternative revenue streams? Are there other ways that you can use your space when you're maybe you're not using it for your own mission, or maybe there's a kind of adjacent or collaborative partner that not only will you bring in additional revenue, but there's an opportunity to maybe grow your business in an offshoot or another way you're interested in the future. So there's all sorts of kind of strategy there to how
Right.
you're using space and how you partner with
Yeah.
folks.
I think a prime example of that would be Amazon and the way that their large warehouse space is not just dedicated solely to Amazon products, but to uh, thousands upon thousands of other people that want to have their own businesses. So they're able to kind of basically, I mean, the people that are selling their products through Amazon are paying Amazon's bill for their building. You know,
Smart.
they're lining their pocket. Yeah, yeah. So in a business setting or in another setting, who typically would a facilities manager report to in an organization?
Really kind of depends. I've seen it a few ways. It can report to a CFO, so a financial officer. It can report into a chief operating officer, a COO. So I think it depends on the structure of the organization, depends on compliance, maybe the complexity of the organization. If you need to orient the business in a certain way to be focused in a certain way, that's often where facilities can end up falling. I think it can really live in so many different places given it's a service entity and organization in of itself. I think it helps to align that role and position probably within the area of the business that could benefit the most from having alignment in what the organization's goals are. So, for example, if you're looking to really create a strong business and financial plan, it may make sense and behoove you to have facilities kind of reporting into finance. If you're looking to increase value and maybe different operating and revenue streams, and just really trying to expand your offering and expand value,
Right,
maybe decoupling finance from facilities could make good sense. There still has to be a strong partnership there, but having facilities fall under more of an operations and support arm
right.
could bring additional value and kind of forced collaboration between departments. So it can work that way as well. But I think ultimately it also just depends on the people. There's so many different ways you can do it. I think wherever strengths live in different leadership roles and where kind of personalities and all of that kind of meshes is always going to be the best driver, I think, of that setup.
Do you think there's a difference in the uh, how do I want to say this? Okay, so you've done work with like government, you've done work with charities, you've done work with businesses. Is on the business side, is it more prominent that like operations would be the one deciding that, or and in government or charities, is it more prominent that maybe the financial people are driving the decision? And and let me preface that question with a, a statement of my belief, which is always that I tell people that everybody in an organization should, and this is in business, um, I feel should be servicing the tip of the spear. So, in other words, the people that are actually out there doing the job, everybody else is in a support. They're important. They're all important. They're all vital to the objective of the company, but everything should be directed towards ensuring that operations has everything that they need to be able to actually operate, because that's where you earn your money at that point. So with that preface, and then my question, I leave it. Do you think that the type of facility that's being managed might lean more one way or the other? Did I make you go to sleep there?
No, it's a good question, and trying to think if there's any one single case that kind of drives it. I mean, I think security can also drive some of this as well. Like I think it's asset protection, and so corporate security is a piece, and risk management is a big
Right,
element.
liability. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so I think I really do think it kind of just depends to see the bigger picture of what is the business handling day to day? What is its core operations? What is it trying to do?
right,
And what is going to be the best way to not only protect the organization, because if you're not protecting it, then there won't be growth. There's really just exposure. So I think you need to always be thinking about and covering exposure first.
right.
And then from there, see where there's strengths and opportunity on where that focus lies. And if it's reporting to one person, or maybe they're their own entity. I'm certainly always a big proponent of the more, to me, I think the big thing is the more facilities leaders and operations leaders have a seat at the table,
Right.
the better organizations are going to be now and in the long run, because things are constantly changing.
Yep.
Codes, best practices,
Yep.
the trades industry, just talent management, all of that, it's way more unpredictable than it's ever been before, and it changes so quickly, and it can have really enormous impacts, good or bad. I think the more leaders are have a seat at the table, no matter who they're reporting to,
Yep.
they're trusted, they're engaged, they're able to collaborate, they're given that empowerment to engage, and that's just for the benefit of
Right.
the whole
Yep.
organization. So
I agree. And I think yours and my experiences when we were working more closely together with the different organizations that we were working for, um, we both experienced that, if you don't have the autonomy over the area that you've been given responsibility, it makes it very hard for you to actually implement the change, because you need that support and that voice. I think voice, giving voice to your subordinate leaders uh, is very important, you
agreed.
know. Yeah.
Yep.
So without putting too fine a point on that. So, okay. So let me see here. Uh, so sorry. I don't have my glasses on, so I can't read the
No,
next
you're
question.
good.
I asked one question, you're right. I read one question and we just went off. So yeah, I think we kind of touched on this. So let's talk a little bit about, operational efficiency, cost reduction, and sustainability and compliance. We'll just kind of bump that all together. You kind of touched a little bit on that, but can you give me some examples of how facilities management can help with the operations and sustainability and cost reduction?
Sure.
Okay.
The kind of philosophy I've adopted, and when I consult with or work with teams, is kind of, I call it the four P's. It's people, it's purpose and process and progress. And I'll focus more here on the process and progress piece. I think
Right.
you find operational efficiency when you have really strong processes, and when you understand the people that are in the process and in the machine, they're going to execute the work and work together. I think if you don't have strong processes, if you don't have strong data, if the data is also not entered well, bad data in, bad data out, like you
Yeah.
need good
Right.
data.
Yep.
You need good communication processes. Like, what are the actual tools you're going to use technology wise? How are you going to use that data and track it and be able to leverage it in a way that supports your day to day operations and your long term goals? And how are you going to communicate and streamline in a day to day fashion? It's going to be different for different types of businesses. I think just really understanding all those different components and finding the most streamlined and efficient ways to take your data, the people understand what it is you're doing and leverage that in a way that's meaningful and purposeful, you're going to find operational efficiencies. So I think one of the best examples I see is just really having a discipline and a structure that's not does not always exist, I think, for facilities teams or a lot of small businesses, is really just embracing and understanding you need a way that everyone agrees on and is going to work in, because you can develop a process, and if no one is using it, it really doesn't work, then it's kind of useless. So coming up with a way of how are you going to disseminate information, engage others, how are you going to share updates, how are you going to track progress, how are you going to track all the little things you do every day that makes the job and the deliverable great that often don't get seen. Just really finding that automation in that way to track what it is you're doing and being able to then track, verify, quantify, celebrate what it is you're doing. You need that inherent process in order to do that, and you need to know where you're going. How are you going to measure success? How are you going to keep people engaged and moving forward when people are going to be tired and they're going to want to slow down maybe, or they're going to want to work on something else or pivot. So I think having those systems in place keeps everything moving in the right direction, and you find efficiency in that way, and you find the data to make the business cases to support where you need more resources, and then that just kind of perpetuates the progress.
So, I agree with you, like on the whole process thing, but I kind of want to pause there for a second and delve a little bit into this, because I agree that processes are very important. And I've in my landscaping and hardscaping business that I'd had, in other businesses that I've helped, I've always had processes for certain things. Definitely have to have a process. This is the way it's done. But I've come across people that think, uh, well, we need processes. Okay, great. For what? What do you need? Well, we just need processes. Okay, but just telling people you need processes doesn't tell them what you really need. I think that the processes is the cart. The horse needs to be, what are we trying to achieve? Right. So with
Definitely.
facilities management, it might be, the first thing we need to do is have a way that our teams can, load out easily to cut down on the amount of time that, before they even get on the road to go to their first job. Okay, great. Now we know what that needs to be done. Now let's create the process. But just creating a process for the sake of saying, oh, look at us. We've got 343 processes. You see all these books behind us? We've written them all down. Um, do you agree, disagree, or would you care to elaborate on that, or maybe some experiences that you've seen one way or the other?
Yeah, I definitely agree. There's no one size fits all to this. I think even two of the same operations, I can give examples of when I've done this work in schools, in private schools. They can be the same kind of similar mission, same school size, but they may just end up communicating and processing differently. They may have a work order system that's really robust and ties into their capital planning modules. It ties into utility management,
Right,
event planning. You can really get the whole suite if that is what you need and what works for you. Or I've seen the alternative where it works for a client or for a school that they just have a system of email that works for them.
right,
And it just really all depends. It could be the most simplistic of cases to the most complicated
right,
and complex. And it just depends on the level of sophistication you're needing, you're looking for, that people can actually use and adopt. It depends on, I think, just a holistic and integrated look at what it is we're trying to bring people towards and who's going to be working with
and,
those tools
and
every day.
and there I think you're hitting. I'm sorry to interrupt, but there you just said, I think that the most important question that needs to be asked anytime you're doing anything, and is, what are we trying to accomplish?
Right. I
You
think
know,
why is the single best question we
yeah,
can be asking ourselves at any moment of any day,
right,
professionally, personally, just taking that pause and just thinking and asking that question, why am I doing this? Why does it matter?
Right.
Why does it have to be happening now? Why not tomorrow? Just always kind of having that prompt and pause is critical in so
Yeah.
many ways.
Yeah. No, I often make the joke, and I think other people have said this too. My mother always taught me to question everything, and I asked her why.
Yeah. And the more you can contemplate it
Right.
versus react and be like, just because,
Right.
like, the
Yeah.
better it is for
Right.
everyone.
Yeah. Well, that's the parents' typical response. I used to drive me up the wall, but
Right.
I tried to avoid that with my children, but sometimes they just it's like one question after another, and they just building upon each answer, and then finally it's like, because that's the way it is. And I was really lucky. I mean, my father, he'd go, I don't know, but I'll find out. And then like maybe 3 days later at dinner, he'd be like, hey, I went and talked to this guy over at, like IBM or something like that and got the answer. Or I called this library or something and got the answer that you were looking for. Because I swear to God, I drove the poor man to, he didn't drink, but I think he wanted to with me because I was just constantly like, why, how. Um,
Amazing.
but
What a good collaborator.
yeah, yeah, he was. But him encouraging me to do that, I think, was probably the single most important uh thing that he could have done to get me to look at everything around me, which is one of the reasons why I'm really good at problem solving, because I don't just look at, here's me patting myself on the back, but I don't just look at, okay, this is the problem we have, but why do we have that problem? And why is it important if we have that problem, or is it not important? Right? Sometimes you got to ask that. Like, is this really a big issue?
Hmm.
Is this really something we need to dedicate our time to? Well, if the answer is yes, okay, let's keep asking questions. If the answer is no, okay, come back to me when it is a problem. And then, we can talk about it. So yeah, I think though that you hit it right on the head there. It's, asking that question uh before anything, or the questions that may follow. Thank you for joining us on the first part of our interview with Diana Ortiz Burns with OspreyRising.com. Be sure to join us next week for part two. And if you enjoyed the video, be sure to click subscribe and like, and leave us some comments or questions. Have a great day and see you next week.